I first worked with Senator Carper, who was then Governor Carper, in 1996, and one of my favorite stories of working with him was attending an event with other incredibly complex and difficult to build technologies. In Delaware, they have an annual event called the Pumpkin Chunkin', where people build machines to hurl pumpkins as far as possible. And these are they're unbelievable machines. And I think if we could harness some of this technology in the nuclear industry, it would be to our great benefit. As all of you know, Senator Carper has a very long and distinguished career in public service. He was the state treasurer of Delaware at age 29. He went on to become a congressman, served 5 terms in the House. He was elected as the 78th governor of Delaware in 1992 and served 2 terms. I was there as he was campaigning for his second, which he won quite handily, I must say. But Delaware wanted more out of Tom Carper, and in 2001, he became the senator of the first state. Before Tom Carper began his service to Delaware, that state had the worst credit rating in the country. And while treasurer, he boosted it to AA, and while governor, it rose to AAA. So I think it's safe to say that he was in the right place at the right time for his state and for our country. And of course, this career in public service did not begin when he ran for office. It began when he served in the Navy, where he achieved the rank of captain and retired in 1991. I think all of you would agree that he's best known for his role as honorary co-chair of Third Way, for which we are profoundly grateful, and for serving as one of the co-chairs of the New Millennium Nuclear Energy Partnership that Third Way and INL held, including our nuclear summit that we did with Senators Carper, Voinovich, and many others several years ago. Now, we all know that Senator Carper is a results-oriented guy, and one of the results he's been fighting for throughout his career in the Senate has been to promote sustainable energy path for our country, some of the things that we were just talking about. He is chairman of the Subcommittee on Clean Air and Nuclear Safety in the Senate, and he has been a tireless advocate for clean air, a reduction of dependence on foreign energy and on fossil fuels, and to create American jobs while we're at it. And he really recognizes, as you'll see in a moment, that in order to clean our air, we can't lose the emissions, we can't lose the energy from emissions-free nuclear energy, as we've discussed quite a bit already today. Please join me in welcoming Senator Carper, and after he speaks, I'll take a few questions. Thank you.
Thanks, Matt. Good morning. It's raining out there, which is a good thing. Matt mentioned I spent some time in the Navy. I was served 3 tours over in Southeast Asia, and one of the places we used to fly in and out of a lot was Okinawa. And we got there, first time we got there was like 6 or 7 months into a 9-month drought. It literally hadn't rained in 6 or 7 months, and we could take a shower once out of every 48 hours at midnight to 1 a.m. And you couldn't drink the water, but and they had some air conditioning units, but they were run off of water, so there was no air conditioning. We were there in the middle of summer in Okinawa. It was pretty warm, and we actually reconfigured our airplanes so that they would, Admiral, like this, we reconfigured the backs of our P-3s so that we could actually see clouds, and we did that, and made it rain. And ever since then, I've never complained when it rains. I've never complained. It's a beautiful day. It could be pouring down rain. I could be without my umbrella. It's still a beautiful day. On Labor Day, we had a Labor Day parade in Wilmington, and it just poured down rain. We still had the parade, and I smiled through the whole thing, and it was just great to be alive and to be there. I want to just go back and just follow up on one quick thing that Matt said. I got to run for state treasurer. I'd been in the Navy for 5 years and moved to Delaware, got an MBA, and the Democrats were like. Now we're so strong in Delaware, and I think there's Republicans hold one statewide elected position. At the time, I think Democrats held maybe 2, and I got to run for state treasurer because nobody wanted to. And I was down at Dewey Beach in the summer of 2000 and about 1976 at Dewey Beach, and had a beach house with a bunch of people just looking forward to living life at Dewey Beach that summer, and having a great time. Not married, and happened to be listening to the Democratic convention on my transistor radio there at Dewey Beach. a year, 2 years earlier, I'd been a graduate student, an MBA student at University of Delaware, and I'd been as a fundraiser and treasurer for Democrat Jim Soules, great guy, who ran for beloved professor at the university, who ran against Pete DuPont, who had been our congressman, later became our governor. And I listened to the Democratic Convention in Dover that summer afternoon at Dewey Beach, and the Democrats ended up in Dover at their convention nominated candidates for U.S. Senate, U.S. House, governor, lieutenant governor, on down the ticket, but they did not nominate anybody for state treasurer. And they lost their quorum. Everybody walked out and left, so they left Dover without nominating a candidate for state treasurer. And I turned to my girlfriend, Nancy, that day, in that hot day as the sun was setting down in the west. And I said, "It's going to sound strange, but I feel like I'm going to be that candidate for state treasurer, and I'm going to win." She just didn't say anything for a while, and she looked at me. She said, "You've been in the sun too long." It was one of those weird things, though. I just felt like this is why I came to Delaware. I could have gone a lot of places to business school, but I came to Delaware. I said, this is it. I should do this. And I just knew. If you ever had that happen to you, and like in twinkling of an eye, you just knew certainly what you should do. 2 days later, I'm up in Wilmington, and I go meet with our Democratic State Party chairman, Henry Topel, who I'd met 2 years earlier in the congressional campaign, where I was the treasurer and fundraiser for a congressional candidate. I went in to see him, and I said, "Mr. Topel, remember me, Tom Carper?" He said, "Oh, Tommy, you always call me Tommy. Tommy, come in." And I said, "You don't have a candidate for state treasurer, and if you don't have a candidate for state treasurer, I'd be happy to run." And he said, "I have just 3 questions for you, Tommy." I said, "Yes, sir." I said, "My first question is, can you walk?" I said, "Yes, sir." He said, "My second question is, can you chew gum?" I said, "Yes, sir." He said, "My third question is, can you do both at the same time?" I said, "Yes, sir." He said, "You're my man." Not a high bar to cross. Not a high bar to cross. But Pete DuPont was actually elected governor that year. He was a great governor. And I drafted on him in NASCAR. If you're like right behind the car ahead of you, you draft on it. He did a great job as governor, and had some wonderful people in the legislature. I hope I helped a little bit. I think I helped maybe some. As state treasurer, anyway, we got the job done. And one of my happiest weeks as governor was when we went to AAA across the board. That was a great week, as you might imagine. My time in the Navy was spent a lot of time in airplanes chasing guys in submarines, and they're usually Soviet submarines. We flew a lot of missions over and around off the coast of Vietnam and Cambodia at low levels, but most of my 23 years that I was in the Navy, we just spent it chasing submarines. A lot of my friends in the Navy ended up on nuclear-powered submarines and some on aircraft carriers. And when you live on a nuclear power plant, anybody here ever been in the nuclear Navy? Anybody here in the nuclear Navy? Yeah. When Admiral, nice to see you. But when you do that kind of for like a living, and you know your buddies are there doing the same thing, it's not as frightful or frightening as it otherwise might be. I want to thank Third Wave for pulling us together today. I want to thank the Center for Strategic and International Studies. I want to thank the folks at the Idaho National Lab, and I want to thank the Bipartisan Policy Center for pulling us all together. We are at we're in the throes of an election campaign, but our country, we're trying to struggle to come out of a middling economic recovery and turn it into a booming economic recovery. I like to say, and I have to be careful how I say this, but the underlying fundamentals of our economy are not all bad. They're not all bad. And I realize there are a lot of people out across our country that are hurting, need our help. And they call my offices every day back in Delaware. They call our office here. They lost their job, can't find a job. They're losing their home. They're not going to be able to send their kids to school. They're afraid they're going to lose their health care. And we hear from folks, and we try to help them. One of the great things about the work that I'm privileged to do is we actually help a lot of people. One of the best ways you can help somebody, though, is to help them get a job. Help them get a job. And one of the things that people in my line of work don't do, we don't create jobs. And you hear senators or governors, even recovering governors, you hear mayors, presidents sometimes say that they created so many jobs. I don't say that, because I don't think I did that. But what folks, men and women that have the kind of privilege that we do to serve, what we do is we help create a nurturing environment for job creation. That's what we do. Much like plowing a field, making sure there's enough water, sunshine, fertilizer if needed, the right seeds. We have to create a nurturing environment for jobs too. And that includes a whole lot of things. I don't know if you ever thought about these, but included in a nurturing environment are world-class workforce. People coming out of our schools who can read, write, think, do math, use technology, good work ethic. World-class infrastructure, not just roads, highways, bridges, not just rail, not just ports, not just airports, not just water, wastewater treatment, not just broadband, but all the above. Reasonable tax burden, certainty as to what the tax code is going to look like going forward. Certainty, predictability is a huge factor. Affordable health care. Most people think health care costs are still going up by double-digit rates of inflation, but Christine Savinicki was telling me the other day that they are only going up this last year by 4%. And what we're trying to do is to change the paradigm of the way we deliver health care in this country. Kind of like turning an aircraft carrier. And it's hard to do, but if we keep working at it, we can do it. But we're trying to turn from a system where we spend money on people when they're sick, fee for service, and to try to spend more money to help people stay healthy and well, and to incentivize them to take better care of themselves, and to figure out how to coordinate the delivery of health care with electronic health records and stuff like the Delaware Health Information Network, which we've created. Other factors in the nurturing environment, common sense regulations, access to people like me and my staff and folks who are involved in making decisions, common sense regulations. That's all part of the nurturing environment. Another big part of the nurturing environment is energy. Energy that is predictable, energy that is cost-effective, affordable, energy whose consequences in terms of public safety, whether it's explosions or radiation contamination, or whether it's just ingesting sulfur dioxide or nitrogen oxide or mercury, but energy that can be created that's affordable, predictable, sustainable, and relatively safe, both for our health and for our public safety. For me, nuclear power, and I might also add energy, the creation of which actually creates jobs. And for me, nuclear power checks just about all those boxes, and it has for some time. Some of the real challenges here are, what do we do with the spent fuel? Every article I've ever read about the Yucca Mountain, they always call it a dump. I've never seen an article that didn't just call it a dump. Where's Laura Haynes? Laura, would you just raise your hand? Laura Haynes. Laura Haynes, who helps me on a bunch of issues, including energy and environmental issues, and now some ag issues. Laura and I were fortunate to go over to France for a couple of days about a year and a half ago, in the middle of the winter, and we visited, as I'm sure some of you have, the facilities that they have there, where they try to do something with their spent fuel rods, something a lot smarter than just like storing it for the next 10,000 years or so. And I like to quote Albert Einstein, who used to say, "In adversity lies opportunity," and I feel that's true in almost everything that we do. And I look at spent fuel rods, and I see, like some of the people over in France do, opportunity, and the opportunity to figure out how to recycle, reprocess them, and how to create more energy, not the less, and how to reduce the likelihood of an impact, an adverse impact on our society. I think Lisa Murkowski might have been here with you today, and as anyone from the was Brett Scowcroft here? Was he here? Yeah, and I'm sure he talked about the work of the Blue Ribbon Commission. I think the president was smart to appoint it. We have a gal who served on that Blue Ribbon Commission, now serves on our NRC. She actually chairs and works with Commissioner Savinicki. But I think there's a great opportunity for that group and the rest of us working together to figure out, is there an opportunity in that adversity? And if so, let's seize the day. Let's seize it in a way that is not only makes us safer, but also provides employment opportunities. And the time that we spend in France sort of suggested to me that maybe we can do both of those things, and we ought to do both of those things. I've been working on clean air legislation since about 2001. I came here in 2001, and we went to work right away. Jim Riley, some of you know Jim Riley, my chief of staff, and fellow who preceded Laura as my senior advisor on environmental and energy issues. We worked for years on clean energy issues, trying to figure out how to reduce emissions of sulfur dioxide, nitrogen oxide, mercury, and CO2 from power plants. And I like to say, people, I'm not sure how many people died from exposure to nuclear radiation last year, but I can tell you how many people died from exposure to sulfur dioxide. It's in tens of thousands. And I don't know how many people died from exposure to radiation last year, but I know how many women of childbearing age are walking around in our country today with high levels of mercury and in danger of giving birth to brain-damaged babies as a result of that. We had a hearing, I'm sure Commissioner Savinicki will recall this, oh gosh, several months ago. And I asked and one of our colleagues, I think a colleague on the committee, Democrat from Vermont, as an independent from Vermont, excuse me, don't tell him I said that. But he was going after the commission pretty hard on one of, I think in particular, maybe a reactor in his state. And when he finished up, it was my opportunity to ask some questions of the commission. And I said, I don't know, have any of you been over to Fukushima lately, to Miyagi Prefecture? And if so, could you just share with us a little bit of what you learned, but especially let us know how many people have, like, who worked there, were part of the workforce there, the cleanup crew, how many people have died so far of exposure to nuclear radiation? I said, does anybody have an idea? And a couple of them raised their hand and said, yeah. And I said, well, how many? And they said, well, we do have an idea, and the answer is none. I said, oh, really? And I said, do you all have any idea how many people back at 3 Mile Island who were part of that accident and the cleanup of 3 Mile Island, how many of those folks have died because of exposure to radiation? Does anybody have a clue? And somebody raised their hand and said, do you ever have a clue? And the answer is none. And then Captain Ostendorf, Commissioner Ostendorf, your old Navy guy, one of the submariners, he raised his hand and he said, I also know the answer to how many folks in the Navy on ships and submarines and aircraft carriers that have nuclear power plants. I know how many of those folks have died from the exposure to the nuclear energy, and the answer is none. And the answer is none. Now, does that mean we should be complacent? We should sit back and rest on our laurels? No way. No way, Jose. I started to say something else, but I'll say, no way, Jose. I think it's all the more reason to continue to do what we're already doing. And that is to find ways every day, week, month, year to make sure that what we're doing is even safer than we already believed it to be. As good as, and I work very hard, my staff, we work very hard, but we know every day, everything we do, we can do better. And I think that's probably true of every one of us as people and the folks that we work. We can all do better what we're chosen work is in life. The same is true of nuclear power, and the same is true of the NRC. And I'm really pleased with the lineup we have, and grateful that Christine Svinicki was running to serve another term, and I think Chairman McFarland, she's going to be a good addition. We've got a good group of people, I think. And but as good as they are, and as good as the NRC is, we can all do better. They can do better. And one of the keys for us is to learn from places like Fukushima, to learn from what they did wrong and maybe what they did right, more wrong than right, and to make sure that we learn one way or the other how to better perform our missions here. There's a couple of, like 3 nuclear power plants that I see, I can almost see from my house in Wilmington, Delaware. They're about 20 miles or so from my house. We can see the plumes on it on a clear day. And there are a lot more people in Delaware that are exposed because of their perimeter proximity to those plants than the folks in southern New Jersey are. So for us, this is a matter of our naked self-interest. We want to make sure that everything that happens in those plants happens well. And going to go back to the Navy for a minute. I'm sure Admiral remembers this, but in our squadron, Navy P-3 airplane, 13-man aircraft, 4 engines, flew 12-hour missions. Sometimes very high altitude, sometimes very low altitude. Whenever we had an incident in an airplane, if there's something that one of our crew members did wrong, if it was a pilot or co-pilot, or engineer, or any of us on the flight, that we somehow screwed up, human error, or there was a problem, malfunction on the aircraft that endangered our ability to do our mission, caused an abort of the mission, could have caused an abort of the mission, could have caused an incident or an accident. We didn't just like cover it up. No, we came back, we landed, we did a full report. And the Navy, our squadron investigated, whoever our command was investigated, and then it went beyond our command. And the idea there was to learn as much as we can to make sure that we didn't just ignore problems, but we use that as an opportunity, an adversity lies opportunity, to actually do better what our mission was in the Navy. And the same is really true in, with respect to nuclear power. Last thing I want to say is this, jobs, jobs, jobs. God knows we need jobs, we need good paying jobs. As it turns out, with nuclear power, we actually create some good jobs, some real good jobs. And we create them not just in building the nuclear power plants, but we create them in operating those plants, as you know. I think we make a mistake, though, if all we do is, and we've got 4 new ones that are on, maybe 5, if you count that, the other one, but we got 4 or 5 that are a little under construction. We went, what, 25 years without building a new nuclear power plant. Now we're building 4 or 5 of them. And those are good jobs to build and to operate. But I think we miss the boat if all we do is build or operate the plants. Same thing with offshore wind. I'm a huge advocate of offshore wind. There's a great place to harness the wind 12 miles east of Rehoboth Beach, where the wind blows not too hard, not too soft, but just right. This is like Goldilocks, the 3 bears, remember? The porridge was too hot, too cold, just right. The wind off of 12 miles east of Rehoboth is just right. And I want to make sure we harness that wind and wind all the way from, I don't know, North Carolina up to Maine if we can. But one of the keys to doing that is having in place the right kind of tax policy, investment tax credit to be able to incentivize folks. And one of the keys for nuclear is to make sure that we have in place, whether it's the right tax policy or the right kind of insurance backup, but there are a number of ingredients that we need there as well. But the last point, I should just say this very clearly, not enough to just build these babies. It's not enough just to operate nuclear power plants. We have to figure out how to build, manufacture more of the components for the plants. And the same is true for offshore wind. Not enough just to deploy offshore wind, harness electricity. We've got to figure out how to build those components. And you know what? Our job is getting a little easier because, I'll close with this, I think that some of the underlying variables in the economy are actually better than they were. Among those, price of energy, the availability of low-cost natural gas, and the opportunity here to actually address our budget deficit in a way that is thoughtful, comprehensive, I hope along the Bowles-Simpson track. And the last piece would be to try to provide some of the certainty and predictability that's missing right now. If we can do that, I think we'll be on our way to the races. And if you go back 4, 5, 6, 7, 10, 20 years, we've had American wages right up here. China, Vietnam, right here. And American wages, productivity is better. American wages are still, for better or worse, right about here. But the wages in these other countries keeps on coming up. And what that does is the wage disparity between us and some of these low-cost countries is less. And that can be a very good thing for us. And we just have to, as we say in Delaware, carpe diem, which translates loosely to seize the day. Thank you so much.
I think Senator has time for a couple of questions.
Just questions are fine, or if you have just something you want to share with all of us, including me, that'd be fine. Yes, sir. Go, she's bringing it, Jeff. She's bringing it up.
Jeff Johnson with Chemical and Engineering News. In terms of legislation to enact the recommendations of the Blue Ribbon Commission, Bingaman had a bill, or has a bill, hope for bipartisan support. It looks like it didn't happen. I'm curious, do you see any path ahead in probably not this Congress, but in the next Congress to make this thing real? How do you think it might happen?
Yeah, I see no chance. Next question. Actually, I'm Mr. Glass half full, as Matt and some others know. I don't know if I'll have a chance to be back. I sure as hell wish Jeff Bingaman were coming back. And I understand we got some good people running out there in that state. But he's really good at building bipartisan support. I know he worked hard with Lisa, who's great to work with as well. And they tried to work, I think Jeff tried to work with Lamar, and I think with Dianne Feinstein. Was it Dianne Feinstein? I think so. And to see if they couldn't come together around the bill. I think Jeff, in authoring his legislation, kind of laid down a marker. And what I'm told by people who have actually read it, I've not, but by people who have actually read it, and I am a huge admirer of his, that he's done good work. And my goal is, if I'm reelected, is one of the senior people in Environment and Public Works. Maybe if I have a chance to chair the subcommittee on nuclear safety and clean air, that we'll have a chance to work with Lisa, and whoever succeeds, if Lisa may succeed Jeff as the chair, or if not, maybe Ron. Is it Ron Wyden? I think Ron is next in line to work with them. And one of my favorite people to work with is Lamar. And the idea would be for as many of us who want to be involved, to be involved. I love to get stuff done. It drives me crazy being unable to get things done. As I said earlier, recovering governor, and I'm just too old to change. So we'll find a way to get it done. And actually, the Blue Ribbon Commission has provided great service for us. We'll work with the Nuclear Regulatory Commission and a bunch of you to figure out that roadmap. But we have an administration. I think if the president's reelected, I hope he will be. I think today I'm encouraged that he will be. We should just vote today. So, but they won't let us do that. But the president's reelected. He's indicated that he's an advocate of nuclear power. And if he's not, and if Governor Romney's elected, I don't know as much about his positions, but I would hope that he would be as well.
I think we have time for just one more.
Right back here on the right. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Hi, Charles Newstead from the State Department. I wondered if you could give us your views on how to get something done which is both clean and it's safe, and it's not getting much attention at the moment, and that's fusion, especially fusion induced by lasers. When you turn the laser off, the reaction stops, so there's no danger there. It produces very little radioactivity compared to the fission process, and it's almost there. We've been working on it quite quietly. Doesn't get much noise, but in fact, I just wondered what your view would be on getting some support for fusion, especially the laser-induced fusion, and whether that's something that could come through Congress and so on.
Our oldest son studied engineering, mechanical engineer from MIT. And during one of our visits up there, for those of you who have kids who've gone to school or were in school and your parents used to visit you, we heard from a guy who's prominent, I think at Harvard. He teaches at Harvard, but he's very much involved in a fusion project at MIT. And he asked us to, when we were up there visiting Christopher about 2 years ago, just before he graduated, I said he'd like to show us the work that was going on at MIT. So we went and we looked at it. I've talked with him since, and with some folks out on the West Coast who actually have a real passion around this. And my own view is it's not something we're going to pull the plug on and forget and just walk away from. I think there's promise there. There's some potential there. And I would hope that we wouldn't just say, no, that's never going to happen. There are people who feel like we'll never figure out how to recycle nuclear waste, if you will, spent fuel rods. And I think we ought to continue R&D, ought to continue activities and trying to figure out how to do that. I think the payoff for whether it's spent fuel or fusion are too great just to ignore. So,
I think we have to leave it at that. Would you join me in thanking Senator Carper?
Thank you, everybody. Thanks so much.
And on behalf of...
P.S., if I could, just a quick P.S. Enjoy this rainy day and night.
Thank you all so much.